The grammar system is not closed, but is rather constantly evolving due to the creativity of its users as they make new meanings, making it impossible to distinguish errors from linguistics innovations without an appeal to socio-political factors, such as who is doing the talking. According to Lassen Freeman, Grammaring grammar has features of duality to English majors. That is, it should be taken both as knowledge and as ability. When viewed as knowledge, the focus is on the acquisition and research of rules for sentence formation. When viewed as ability, the focus is on how grammar is used as a resource in creation of spoken and written text. Grammar refers to the set of rules that govern the structure of a language. In other words, it is the system of rules and principles that guide how words are used to create sentences and convey meaning. These rules cover a wide range of aspects of language, including the syntax, morphology, phonology, and semantics of a language. For example, grammar rules dictate how words are ordered in a sentence, how tense is used to indicate time, how pronouns and articles are used to indicate gender and number, and how prepositions are used to indicate location or direction. By understanding and following these rules, speakers of a language are able to communicate more effectively and accurately. This is why teaching grammar is an essential part of language learning, as it enables students to develop the skills they need to use the language in practical situations. Why we teach grammar? Grammar is an essential part of language learning, as it provides students with the tools they need to communicate effectively. Teaching grammar helps students to develop a deeper understanding of the language they are learning, which in turn makes it easier for them to use the language in practical situations. For examples, teachers can teach grammar by providing explanations and examples, incorporating grammar into writing and speaking activities, and using games and other interactive activities to help students practice using grammar in context. Grammaring is the process of using grammar rules to create coherent and meaningful language. For example, using subject-verb agreement, proper tense, and word order to create a sentence that makes sense. Grammaring is an important part of language learning, as it allows students to use grammar rules in real-world situations and to develop their own grammar skills as they become more proficient in the language. Here are some additional examples of how grammaring can be practiced. Number one, sentence construction. Students can be given a set of words and asked them to construct a grammatically correct sentence using those words. Number two, it can also be practiced in error correction. Example, students can be given a passage of text that contains grammatical errors and ask them to identify and correct those errors. It can further be practiced in listening and speaking. Example, students can be given a dialogue or conversation to listen to and then ask them to practice constructing sentences using the grammar they heard in the conversation. in writing. Students can be given a writing prompt and ask them to write a paragraph or essay that uses a specific grammar point, such as verb tense or subject verb agreement. Number 5, in games. There are a variety of games that can be used to help students practice grammaring, such as board games or online quizzes that test their knowledge of grammar rules. These are just few examples of the many ways in which grammaring can be practiced in language learning. By actively using grammar rules in context, students can develop a more intuitive understanding of the language and become more confident and proficient in their language skills. Let's move on to grammaticalization, or also known as grammaticalizing. French linguist Anton Millet introduced the concept of grammaticalization in his 1972 study, Evolution de Forme Grammaticalis. In its broadest sense, according to him, grammaticalization is described as the process by which grammar is created. Further, it is the language process change by which words representing objects and actions become grammatical markers, which results in the creation of function words through a process other than deriving them from existing bound and inflectional constructions, but instead derived from content words. Grammaticalization also involves reduction and increased dependency. Reduction is also known as phonetic erosion or phonological reduction, an expression in linguistics that loses phonetic substance if it undergoes grammaticalization. Now we move on to correction and feedback. There are types of correction. One is explicit correction. This involves directly pointing out an error in order to provide specific guidance on how to correct it. For example, a student says, I go to the store yesterday. Then a teacher will correct the student. Actually, the past tense of go is went. So, you should say, I went to the store yesterday. In this manner, the teaching is providing correction. Number 2, recast. Recast involves repeating the incorrect sentence back to the student with the correct form. See the scenario. For example, student, me and my friends is going to the park. The teacher will correct. Oh, you and your friends are going to the park? That's great. Another is elicitation. Elicitation involves prompting the student to correct the error themselves. Example, I don't have no pencils. To correct that, the teacher will say, what's another way to say that without using a double negative? So with that, the student will realize, oh, I am making double negatives. Meta-linguistic feedback. This involves providing information about the language itself rather than just correcting a specific error. For example, student may say, I read around the track in 5 minutes, and the teacher will correct him. Good job. Did you know that the past tense of run is actually ran? Keep up the good work, boy. These are just a few examples of the types of error correction that can be used. The most effective approach will depend on the individual student and their learning style. So it's important to be flexible and open to trying different strategies. Now, we'll move on to feedback. So there are several ways of giving feedback. One, spoken grammar feedback. This involves providing feedback on grammar usage in spoken language. For example, the teacher will say, "You did a great job explaining your ideas, but I did notice a few errors in your verb tenses. Let's work on that before your next presentation." So in this case, the teacher is pointing out the wrong use of verb tenses. So that's example of spoken grammar feedback. Number two, written grammar feedback. This involves providing feedback on grammar usage in written language. For example, teacher, your essay had a clear structure and good evidence to support your argument, but I did notice some issues with subject-verb agreement. Let's review that in our next lesson. Spoken versus written grammar feedback. This involves providing feedback on the differences between spoken and written grammar. For example, teacher, in spoken English, it is more common to use contractions like I'm instead of I am. However, in formal writing, it is better to use the full form. Let's practice both in different contexts. It is important to provide feedback on both spoken and written grammar usage, as they can differ in important ways. By addressing these differences and providing targeted feedback, individuals can improve their overall communication skills. Spoken English versus written grammar. Spoken English and written grammar are two different aspects of language that have their own unique rules and conventions. Spoken English refers to the way people use the language in everyday conversations, often with more informal grammar and vocabulary. Some features of spoken English include the use of contractions, colloquialisms, and expressions that are not typically found in written language. In spoken language, grammar rules may be more relaxed and flexible, with a focus on conveying meaning rather than adhering to strict rules. Written grammar, on the other hand, refers to the rules and conventions that govern the use of English in writing. Written grammar tends to be more formal and structured, with a greater emphasis on correct spelling, punctuation, and sentence structure. Written language also tends to be more precise and specific, with a focus on clarity and accuracy of expression. While spoken English and written grammar may seem very different, they are both important aspects of language and can be used to communicate effectively in different contexts. By understanding the differences between these two forms of language and practicing both, individuals can improve their overall communication skills and become more effective communicators. Next, is grammatical assessment. Grammatical assessment refers to the process of evaluating an individual's grammar skills in order to identify areas of strength and weaknesses, and to provide targeted feedback and instruction. This can be done in a variety of ways, depending on the context and the goals of assessment. One common method of grammatical assessment is to administer a grammar test or quiz, which can cover a range of topics such as verb tenses, prepositions, pronouns, and sentence structure. The test or this test can be administered in written or spoken format depending on the type of assessment being conducted. Another method of grammatical assessment is to analyze an individual's written or spoken language samples in order to identify patterns of errors or areas of weaknesses. This can be done using automated tools or through manual analysis by a skilled language expert. Regardless of the methods used, the goal of grammatical assessment is to provide individuals with feedback and guidance on how to improve their grammar skills. This can include targeted instruction and practice, as well as ongoing feedback and support to help individuals continue to develop their language skills over time.